Okay, looks like everything looks okay with the board. So, hello YouTube. Today we're looking at common mistakes again. These videos are actually very easy for me to do because I just take these mistakes from my students' feedback that I send the student after every class, and they're just a list of the students' mistakes. So I just take them from the feedback. I literally look on my computer. It takes me 5 minutes to write them all up on the board, and then I talk about the mistakes. So these are without doubt the easiest lessons for me to make on YouTube. Other lessons aren't that difficult either, but it's really easy to just go through 10 typical mistakes. And these were from the last week, as always. The first mistake's quite an interesting one. I get the chance to use some grammatical terminology, so that's why it's quite interesting. It should look perfectly. Now, I totally understand why the student has made this mistake. They've looked at the verb, and they've looked at this, and they thought, well, this has got to be an adverb, because it's describing the verb. Surely, it's got to be an adverb. Well, it's not. And it's because this verb here, look, there's your modal verb, should. But this verb here, look, it is actually a copular verb. Now, there aren't many copular verbs in English. Be is the most common copular verb, but also look and feel. These verbs are a little bit special because very often with other verbs, with ordinary verbs, non-copular verbs, this would definitely be an adjective. So that if we said something like, he plays tennis, this would definitely be perfectly. Yeah, he plays tennis perfectly. Or he speaks perfectly. Yeah, it would definitely be an adverb. But with these copular verbs, they're not. They're very often adjectives. And this adjective is describing the it. Yeah? It should look perfect. It should be perfect as well. So with look, or it should feel perfect. Yeah? So with these copular verbs, you'll often have subject, I, and then copular verb, am, and then an adjective, I am hot, for example. And of course, the adjective is describing the subject with a copular verb. Okay, so that's why copular verbs are interesting. That's why we describe them differently than ordinary verbs, because they work differently, they function differently. And that's why, even though we've got a verb here, we're going to use an adjective to describe the it. I hope that is all clear. Okay, if you do have any questions, do put them up, and if I spot them, I'll try to answer them as I go along. So number 2, the streets were empty during the translation. This word, translation, I've never personally heard it used in English to mean broadcast. And so I think this is a vocabulary mistake, broadcast. I have found it somewhere online to mean broadcast, but I've never heard it used like that by English people. I've never heard anyone call a translation a broadcast. So keep the word translation for when somebody is translating from one language into another language. That would be a translation. But when you mean television, when you mean that there's a live broadcast of a TV show, use the word broadcast, please. Don't use the word translation. I've heard a lot of students do it. I think it's maybe something connected with the Latin roots of that word translation. Perhaps in other languages in Europe and around the world, perhaps other languages do use the word translation to mean broadcast. But I've never heard anybody in England using the word translation in that way. I could be wrong here. I don't know, maybe people at the BBC regularly use the word translation to mean broadcast, but it's certainly not what I've heard. So if somebody can explain why that keeps coming up, because it does, it comes up all the time. I assume that with my Russian students that they do say translatsiya for broadcast. But I'm not sure why that is. You know, translation in English, it means a translation from Russian into French, or a translation from German into Dutch, whatever. That's the translation when you go from one language to another. Occasionally it means to move something from one place to another, but I've never heard it used meaning broadcast. Okay, you could lose your effort and time. really, I think this is just a bad collocation. We don't talk about losing time or losing effort. We talk about wasting time and wasting effort. So if you want to say spend time badly, if you want to say that unfortunately you tried to do something and it was a waste of time, use the word waste for empty time or empty efforts. Yeah, when you made an effort but it was a waste of time. So please use waste meaning spend time badly or spend money badly. He wasted a lot of money, he wasted a lot of time. Number 4, these companies sell out your private information. Now this is a phrasal verb mistake. This is why I do a lot of work on phrasal verbs, and the phrasal verb book will be coming very soon. I have finished it, and yeah, it should be around by the end of the month. So this is a phrasal verb mistake. Sell out is a phrasal verb, but we use sell out when there aren't when a company has sold all of the tickets, for example, to the concert. You say the tickets have sold out. They don't have any tickets left. They have run out of tickets. They have sold out. That's how sold out is used. But they've got the student was close, and they felt that there was a phrasal verb with sell that they needed, and there was. The correct phrasal verb here is sell off. Facebook and Twitter and all of those other social media networks, they're famous for collecting our information and then selling the information off to other companies, marketing companies, advertising companies. And the reason we use sell off and not sell out is sell off is when you sell something constantly, regularly, until there's no more left. So you're selling off something. So let's say that you go bankrupt and you have to sell off your business. It means you sell off the different parts of the business. Perhaps you sell off the equipment first of all, and then you sell off all of the buildings. So when you're selling off, you're selling something constantly. And here, Facebook constantly sells your private information to somebody else. So they sell off your private information. Very different from sell out, and very different from sell up as well. Sell up is when you sell all of something. So if you sell up your shares and you sell all of your shares, you can still sell off your shares, but that means slowly over a period of time. Okay? So there are a lot of these phrasal verbs, and please get the book for in a few weeks. I'll make that book available, and you can get that book to practice your phrasal verbs, and you can use my lessons as well. Number 5, he is in relation with a former colleague. Now the student here meant to say that the person is still talking to the former colleague. So the idiom or the phrase that we use is not in relation with, it's in touch with. So this is a vocabulary mistake again. He is in touch with a former colleague. Sounds much more natural. Number 6, the stealing of the chip was a crime. Now, we don't use a gerund when there's a perfectly good noun available. We generally don't use gerunds if we have already got a noun, and there is a noun. The noun is theft. So again, this is a vocabulary mistake, really. The theft of the chip was a crime. That sounds much better, much more natural. Number 7 is a vocab mistake as well. They put the chip after his ear. Now, the student meant here, yeah, behind the ear, so not after. We use the preposition behind and not after to mean that something is often hiding behind something else. So the chip was hiding behind the ear. They put the chip behind the ear. Okay. Number 8, I got nervous on my work. Again, it's a vocabulary mistake. A lot of vocabulary mistakes today. I got nervous at work. We do say at work, and we don't say on work, and we don't really say my work either. I mean, whose work would you be at? So we don't usually use a possessive pronoun there. We'd usually just say at work. I get nervous at work, and then it's fine. Number 9 is very common. I've spoken about it before, and I understand this mistake is a logical mistake to make, but sadly, languages are not logical. He has 50 million followers. Now this S looks inoffensive enough, but it actually offends me greatly because we should say 50 million followers. The same with 200, 300, 400. I don't put an S on the end of any of those, even though it's 2, 3, 4. I just say 400, not 400s. The same with 1,000, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000. Never put an S on the end of 5,000, 600, 7 million, 100 million. It will always be without an S. Okay, the last one, I was in Peterhof Palace twice. This is a tense mistake, really. When you say how many times you have done something, you generally must use present perfect. It sounds much better to say, I have been to Peterhof Palace twice. And I would say to as well, by the way, there. I have been to. You could say in. You could say in. I have been in. It's also possible. But really, you must use to for countries. You really must. It sounds strange to say, I have been in Greece. Kind of possible grammatically, but it's not what people usually say. People usually say, I have been to Greece, I have been to France, I have been to Mexico, to, and not in. It's much rarer, and I would even call it a mistake because it's so rare. You could say, I have been in the science block. Yeah, a building like that, it sounds quite normal, and that's why I have been in Peterhof Palace doesn't sound so bad, because it is a building just like the science block. So it really does depend on the noun here. If it's a country, get rid of in, use to. I have been to Japan, I have been to Brazil, but use in maybe. You don't have to though, you could use to here. I think it would be more natural to say I have been to Peterhof Palace twice, but you could use in here because it's a building. So I hope that's clear. Personally, I'd use to for countries and for buildings. It's just what I hear most people doing here. Okay, if you have any questions, now's a good time to ask because I've got time to look at the screen and think. Okay, if there are no more questions then, thanks everybody for watching. I appreciate it. If you've enjoyed the video, please, I always appreciate likes and I always appreciate nice comments as well. I'm sorry I don't have time to reply to a lot of your comments. I'm afraid I don't. But it is getting cold. Yeah, it's okay though. It's lukewarm at the moment, I would say. So thanks everybody for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. Please support me in any way you can. Please buy my phrasal verb book. It's coming soon. And I will see all of you soon for another class. Thanks a lot.